hesitate if you have anything. I think it's a good idea to mute because of background noise, but please don't hesitate to interrupt me if you have something to say. So thank you all for coming today. I did send Kristen and the library the recipes which were included in the Zoom invitation. So if you haven't seen that already, you can print these recipes and have them to keep. We're making today a couple things that I really like to make that are sort of pantry friendly. So things that don't take a lot of fresh ingredients, but you can always make something really delicious. And as usual, these recipes are super adaptable to whatever you have and whatever you like. So the first thing we're going to make are these veggie burgers, which are made with quinoa and beans, canned beans, and of course assorted vegetables, whatever you like. I have already made the quinoa and I have it here in a pot. If you start out with about a half a cup of dry quinoa and about a cup of water, you will end up with about a cup and a half of quinoa. So I have that already cooked. I didn't feel I needed to have you watch me do that. But then we're going to heat up a pan with a little olive oil and add some chopped onions and garlic and some vegetables. So I have about a half an onion here and some garlic. And again, if you're not a big fan of garlic, that's okay. You can skip it. I happen to love garlic, so it's almost always in my food. And we'll just chop an onion and also chop a clove of garlic. If you want to use a half a clove, that's great. This recipe is actually a half recipe of my original. I thought offering a recipe that made 20 burgers might overwhelm somebody. But the thing is, it's just as easy to make this doubled as it is this size recipe. And then you have all these burgers in your freezer. So you might consider making it with 2 cans of beans and twice the other ingredients. And then you just have all that good stuff in your freezer, and they keep for a long time. So consider that, even if you are alone or with a smaller family. So I have our garlic and our onion, and the pan is heating up, and we will start those in here with some olive oil. I think I called for about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And I'll get the garlic going. And today we're gonna use a combination of vegetables. I already have in this measuring cup some grated sweet potato, just raw sweet potato. And I also took out a little bit of frozen spinach, and it's just been defrosting. And then I thought for just a little variety, I'd add just a small amount of a zucchini and summer squash. And these I'm just gonna dice in about 1/4 inch dice. You want them to be pretty small because you're making obviously a sort of veggie burger, so you don't want big chunks of vegetables. So shredding is nice, or a small dice. And we'll just get all these in. And really use whatever vegetables you have. You can use leftover vegetables, just give them a chop, and then you probably won't have to saute them because they're already cooked. You can just add them in as we're adding these cooked vegetables. And frozen vegetables are great. I really like corn in this. And then you can, really make it to your taste, make it mushrooms. I don't care for mushrooms, but if you like mushrooms, I would think they'd be fantastic in this. So we'll just put all of our vegetables in as well. And let those saute. And this is probably more, yeah, this is definitely more than what I said, a half cup to 1 cup of vegetables in addition to the onions. But honestly, I think that's okay. You'll have enough binder with the quinoa and with the egg and with the mashed beans. And of course, the vegetables are soft as well. So it doesn't really matter. When I say a half cup to a cup, feel free to be generous there with your vegetables. So those are going to cook for a little bit. And then we're going to talk about the beans. So I've already rinsed and drained a can of beans, just a regular this size can of beans. And here too, use what you have. I've made this recipe with chickpeas. I've made it with, you know, various sizes of these white kidney beans or cannellini beans. I've made it with black beans. You know, of course, it'll look a little different if you use black beans. But again, use what you have. And I am going to mash these a little bit to get them to have, you know, that sort of binding quality. Not all of them. I'm going to leave some of them whole. I'll mash up most of them. And then I'm also going to add here an egg. So I probably could have done that earlier, but it doesn't matter. We'll just stir that together with our beans. Get the egg nice and broken up. Mix it in with our beans. And move over to a spatula. And then we're going to add some herbs. And the herbs you can use, you can add to the vegetables. And I probably would recommend that anytime you're cooking herbs and spices, it helps to develop their flavor. So I might add them into the cooking vegetables. And here I'm going to use Old Bay seasoning. I have some other mixes of spices and herbs that are really nice. You know, maybe a Cajun mix, an Italian mix, a Mexican mix, whatever you like, or just a straight one herb, basil, oregano, anything like that, whatever you like. About a teaspoon or so of spice or herb. And then I like a little kick. So I'm going to add about a half teaspoon. This is quarter teaspoon. Yeah. Quarter to a third teaspoon of red chili flakes for a little spice. And also I'm going to add a touch of salt to this. I did salt the water for the quinoa, so that has some seasoning in it, but I think it's a good idea to season all the elements of your dish. So this is pretty good. You don't need to cook down the vegetables too much, and of course they're very small. So I've just mostly released some of the liquid, you know, cooked away some of the liquid, particularly in the zucchini, so it's not too wet, and also cooked away the liquid from the spinach. I'm just going to let that cool for just a moment and maybe chop up. I'm going to use some scallion. If you don't have scallion, if you have parsley, if you don't have either, a little celery. I just like a little green in this. So we'll add some scallion. And what's her name over there? Emma is leaving, so bye, sweetie. So we'll put all of these ingredients in with the beans and the egg. And just making sure I have everything. Yep, this, and then some cheese. So we'll mix in the vegetables. And I have a half cup of grated cheddar cheese. And you can also use, say, crumbled goat cheese. You could use feta. You know, you could make this sort of a Mediterranean sort of style using oregano and spinach and feta, almost like a spanakopita. You could do all kinds of things. And I've forgotten, oh, the quinoa. Thought it looked a little strange. Throw the quinoa in there too, don't forget. And just give it a good stir. Make sure everything gets combined. Oops, make a little mess. And that is our mixture. Now, I've found the easiest way to cook these is if they are dredged in breadcrumbs. So I'm going to get a pan ready for to place them on. I have a baking sheet here, and I'm going to put a piece of wax paper on it, if I can find the end. And I recommend that you do refrigerate these a little bit before you cook them. It helps them just set up, everything sort of sticks together a little bit better. And I really suggest you plan to freeze some of these. I mean, it makes quite a bit. So you can make the patties, lay them out on the wax paper, maybe cover them. Sometimes I don't even cover them, just stick them in the freezer, let them freeze until they're nice and hard, and then put them in a Ziploc bag, maybe with a piece of wax paper between each one, and they'll keep beautifully for you. And they're, you know, really, really nice to have in the freezer. So I have some panko breadcrumbs, or any kind of breadcrumbs works. And I'm just going to sprinkle some on a cookie sheet, and I'm going to get a scoop. If you don't have a scoop, you can use just a spoon, anything, but it's sort of nice to have them kind of even size. So about a quarter cup or so scoop. And then I just take some of the breadcrumbs, and I hope you can see this, sprinkle them on top so your hand doesn't stick too much, and then just give them a little pat so everything gets covered with breadcrumbs. And then I might take a spatula and lift it off carefully and just place it on the cookie sheet. So I'll just do one more of those to show you. Again, just sprinkle before you pat it down to give yourself a little barrier between the wet mixture and your hand. Flatten it down to about a ½ inch. It doesn't have to be real thin. And then just place it on your sheet. And then these guys can go in the fridge or just wait for me here. And I'll cook those guys in a minute. To go with actually, does anybody have any questions about the veggie burgers? Feel free to unmute if you do.
Susan, do you just put the breadcrumbs on one side, not the other side?
No, actually on both sides. So there are breadcrumbs on the plate. So you put the dollop of the mixture on the breadcrumbs, and then put some on top. So then it's covered on both sides, and it helps keep your hand clean because it's a really wet, sticky mixture. So it's just easier if you keep the breadcrumbs between you and the
thank you.
So it does get it on both sides. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Everybody okay? So to go with your veggie burgers, certainly any condiment you like is great. A salsa, a red pepper relish, ketchup, mustard, whatever you like is great. I really like, for this recipe and for other things, a tomato chutney. And again, this is something that's, you know, out of your pantry. You're likely to have all these ingredients all the time, and it's just a little more special. So feel free to serve these with whatever condiments you like, but I threw in this tomato chutney recipe because I really like it, and and I thought you might too. So it takes about a half an onion or so, about a quarter cup. I should have chopped these ahead, sorry. And we will saute onion along with, again, a little garlic and a can of diced tomatoes. And you can also, I've seen this recipe also with tomato sauce. I like the chunkiness of the tomato, but it could be more of a saucy sort of chutney if you have a can of tomato sauce. So feel free to do that. And I'm just going to heat up in our pan here a little more olive oil. And find another garlic clove, and maybe I'll put a half a garlic clove in this. Keep it from being too garlicky. And the garlic and onion and the whole can of undrained tomatoes are going to go right into the pan. With olive oil. And I bought these fire roasted diced tomatoes just to give it a little extra color. They have little charred edges, which I thought was kind of nice. So we'll pour that whole can right in here and let everything do its thing. And then the flavoring of this is really to your taste. The basic recipe has some salt and some, the white vinegar. That's pretty important. If you want to have a chutney, it's good to have that little bit of acid. So we're going to add 2 tablespoons of white vinegar. If you don't have white vinegar, cider vinegar would be great. Red wine vinegar. I would think balsamic vinegar would also be good. So whatever you have. And I don't want to forget the salt. So put in ½ teaspoon of salt. And also some red pepper flakes, because again, I like it to have a kick. I'm going to put a whole ½ teaspoon in there. And then I didn't write it in the recipe, but I'm going to add to this batch some whole mustard seeds. So it'll give it that little extra crunch and extra flavor of sort of almost like a pickle kind of setup. So I have I'm going to put a whole teaspoon of yellow mustard seeds in. And then this just needs to cook for a little while. You want it to come to a sort of jammy consistency, but know that it's going to set up a little more after you take it off the fire. So so don't cook it so long that it's already kind of dry. You want it to still be loose, and it'll continue to solidify a little bit after you take it off the flame. And it's delicious with these veggie burgers. So I recommend you make it, and it's really easy. If you can have a can of tomatoes and a little onion and some vinegar, salt and pepper, you're ready to go. And it's it's kind of special. So I really like that recipe. Again, any questions, any conversation? I don't want to be the only one talking. Everybody okay out there?
Yep.
Sounds like it. Excellent. Well, this is moving along really fast. but I have the best for last. I saved the best for last. I'm going to make a chocolate Podocram or pudding that my mom, and I'm afraid I don't see her on the screen, which is too bad. But is that, I can't see. It's hard for me to see everybody's faces. We made this when I was a child, and I was so happy to find the recipe again. And it is about as easy a recipe as possible. You heat up some milk. I have a 3/4 of a cup of milk here. Just going to heat that up. And you want to bring it just to the simmer. So you don't want it to boil, so keep an eye on it. And everything else goes in your blender. So if you have a fancy Vitamix, you can use that, but a regular old blender does the trick. And into this blender, we're going to put a cup of chocolate chips. And I'm pretty partial to Ghirardelli chocolate chips for baking and eating and everything. So I do recommend these. I'm just going to turn down our chutney. I prefer a semi-sweet or even a bittersweet for this recipe. It's a really nice, rich dessert. But if you're partial to milk chocolate, that would be wonderful too. So we have a cup of chocolate chips right in the blender, 1 egg, just a raw egg. And then we're going to put a little bit, I didn't have any instant espresso powder, so I'm going to use a little bit of instant coffee. A whole teaspoon. If you don't want the coffee, if you're worried about the caffeine, you can definitely leave this out, but I think it adds a really good complement to the chocolate flavor. I love the coffee. You don't taste the coffee so much as it just sort of makes the whole thing richer and better. And then also a teaspoon of vanilla, or if you prefer, you could use rum or whatever kind of liqueur you like with your chocolate. I'm just going to go straight vanilla right now. And then 2 tablespoons, if I can find my tablespoon measure, here it is, of sugar or honey. I'm just going to put in the sugar and a little bit of salt. So we have a 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. So all that just goes in the blender, and our milk is coming. It's getting hot, but it's not quite there. So I'm going to show you our chutney, and it's really coming together. I'm not sure how well. Can you see that pretty well? It's sort of hard for me to, I don't know whether in the light or it's better or not. But it still is pretty loose, and it'll be a nice consistency when it cools. So I'm going to take it off the flame now, and let that sit. So our milk is just, yeah, it's starting to bubble around the edges, and you can see it's steaming. So I'm going to put the blender, I wonder if I could do this where you can see. It has to be plugged in, so it's over here. I'm going to put, can you see that? Yes. I'm going to put the jar on the blender, and I have the lid. I'm going to take this centerpiece out. So leave the hole, because you're adding something hot. You don't want to do it in a closed blender. So I'm going to have this with a towel on top to keep it from going anywhere if anything comes out, which I don't think it will, but it'll allow the steam to come out. So I'll pour the hot milk in here and then cover it up. And I'm going to blend this. It says for a minute, so sorry for the noise, but hang on. All right, that probably wasn't quite a minute, but I am pretty confident this is very well mixed. So you can see it just turns into this wonderful emulsion. Everything melts. I make sure your eggs are clean and all of that. I'm not positive this is a cooked egg. If you have any issues with uncooked egg, you might not make this recipe, but it's had the hot milk, so I don't consider it a big risk. And I like to serve this in little glasses, or of course whatever kind of small container you like. When I was growing up, my mom had these great little demi-tasse coffee cups, and whenever I see those on the shelf, all I can think of is eating this chocolate pudding out of them. So you just pour it in and let it sit in your fridge for a couple of hours, and it will set up. And honestly, it's just the greatest dessert. And if you make it, in the morning, you have it ready for your guests in the evening. It couldn't be an easier dinner party dessert. And everyone loves it. A little whipped cream on top is really nice. If you like fruit with your chocolate, that kind of thing. So it's truly a fantastic recipe for dessert. So any questions on our chocolate? I wish, again, this is total tease for you guys. I'm sorry you can't eat this. I definitely would have. Oh, and I have to say this recipe too, I have the original recipe, just thinking, who needs up to 12 servings these days? But double it. It's so easy. You can do it the same. You don't have to do it 2 batches in your blender. Even though that seemed like that filled up the blender, I've made this doubled in that blender, and it works perfectly well. Just double everything, and you're good to go. And then you have lots to share with all your friends. So again, unmute if you want to say anything.
Thank you, Susan. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can show you how I cook these veggie burgers. I like to put them on a cast iron skillet, and you want it pretty hot. I usually use olive oil to saute them, just a light coating of olive oil underneath them. They don't have to really pan fry so much as just don't stick. And they're pretty, they're delicate, but they hold together pretty well. You have to be careful, but they, especially after they've been refrigerated, like if I'm making these for dinner, I might make them, at 3 in the afternoon and put them in the fridge for a couple of hours. And then they'll be that much easier to cook. If you're cooking them from the freezer, you can just put them right in the skillet from the freezer, or let them sit, for half an hour just to defrost a little bit. But you'll just want to make it maybe a little lower heat, a little slower, so you make sure you cook them through. But you can cook them right from the freezer. But I just put a little olive oil, and once that's nice and hot, and I do, what did I do with my spatula? I do move them with a spatula. They don't stay together enough to move with your hands. So not sure this is quite hot. It's getting there. And I think 2 of these is, maybe 3 is a really nice meal. The quinoa, as you probably know, has some protein in it. Of course, there's the cheese, the egg, the beans. So it really makes a very healthy, full meal. And again, you can do whatever you want in the way of vegetables. I don't think I can think of a vegetable that wouldn't be good in this. So you can really make them your own. And once they're brown on one side, just give them a flip, brown them on the other, and you're ready to go. And that's that. So I think I'm made a mess, but I think I'm done cooking. I can't
Looks
hear anybody.
delicious.
It looks wonderful.
Good.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Susan.
Good. Yeah, I wish you all were
Thank
here.
you.
Yeah, so do
We'd like
we.
to- Yeah,
Anyone have any good ideas of what they've made lately? We should all share share ideas.
On the
Where?
right next to Susan. No, keep going up. Yeah.
Sue Black.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Is that May?
That's, yeah, it
Yes,
is.
May.
Yes. Hi, darling.
May.
I couldn't see
Hi,
you
everyone.
enough earlier. All right, so everybody,
Oh,
the young one there with it looks like there's a hood behind you, sweetie.
Yes, it's
like
the
an oven
oven.
hood, a stove hood.
oh, hi.
Is my middle daughter who's having breakfast on Thursday morning in Australia.
Oh,
Yeah.
So
wow.
it's tomorrow there, and she is at the beach, but south of Melbourne, Australia, with her
Oh,
husband.
wonderful.
And it's so good to see you, darling.
Good to see you too. Very fun to follow along.
Yeah.
Well, you've eaten some of this.
I have. It's all delicious. I can attest to how delicious it is.
That's great.
I'm just
Susan,
giving this
I
a
have
little
a
flip.
question.
Yes, please.
Is your family all vegetarians?
No, some of us are not, but enough of us are that we tend to just mostly vegetarian.
Okay,
You
I
know,
was just
we'll
curious
throw,
because of the things
we'll
you've
throw some
made.
chicken. Yeah, you know what? The amount we eat meat maybe once a week. Just sort of, I don't know. It's just easier. I guess. I like meat, but I don't really need it, and my husband doesn't really crave it. So, so it's very easy to please, and we eat a lot of this kind of thing, and a lot of soup and salads.
Yeah,
So,
That's
cool.
yeah, and just so our
It also
veggie burgers.
shows how versatile it is.
Yeah.
all looks
So
really delicious.
I've got a little bit of smoke here. Sorry, but here are the veggie burgers, and with a little scoop of the chutney on the side, or a little avocado is really nice with this. You know, you could definitely put this on a bun if you wanted to eat it that way. It's soft. I will tell you that it's not going to hold together like a hamburger or like some other veggie burgers. It's relatively soft, but it's full of flavor, and it's so adaptable either to your taste or to what you have in your pantry and in your fridge. So I highly recommend them.
Wow, it's wonderful. Thank you again.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you, and we'll post
fun to
the
see you all.
instructions and recipe on the YouTube page when it goes up.
Oh, good. Good. Yeah, that I just discovered that. I saw that link, and that was fun because I missed a few. So it was fun to be able to watch the ones I haven't seen.
Good.
Yeah, thank you so much to you at the library for getting us all together, and Gloria. This is
Yeah,
a
Oh,
really
no,
fun-
it's
fun
great.
program.
It's been fun.
It's great fun, and we really
Yeah.
appreciate, Susan, you're doing this a couple of times for us. We may come calling you
My
again at some point.
pleasure. It's my pleasure. I'd love to see other people's ideas, but
Yeah, we would
anytime you
too.
need it, I'm happy to do it. So
Thank
thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
Susan.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you
welcome.
so
And that
much.
was That was so speedy. I didn't mean for it to be so quick, but then again, we all have other things to do too.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hire
Well,
somebody.
good.
So
Well,
hopefully
take
we'll
care,
see
everybody.
you- yeah, see you
Bye.
all next week, we hope. Take care.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you, everyone. for
guys.
coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May, nice to see you, May.
Nice to see you all
Bye,
too.
May.
Bye.
Thank you, Susan. You look great.
I love it.
Wonderful as always.
Thanks. Bye, Margie. Oh, there you are.
Bye.
It's, when the
See you
pictures
all.
are small, it's hard for me to identify everybody. Good to see you,
I was
Margie.
very fortunate there was no planning board meeting today because usually that conflicts with
Oh,
this.
yes.
So I got lucky.
Right. I'm
Good.
glad you were
Take care,
free.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
And, Bye now.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Bye-bye.